Welcome back to Edge of Intelligence, where we explore how strategy, innovation, and intelligent systems are shaping the future of business. I'm Carl Owen, a fractional CIO and AI advisor at Proteligen. Today's guest leads one of the most dynamic entrepreneurial ecosystems on the East Coast. Paul Nolde is the executive director of 757 CoLab, a venture organization that fuels high-growth startups through incubation, acceleration, and investment, helping founders across Virginia's Hampton's Roads region transform ideas into impact. Paul, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Carl. It's great to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to get involved in building startup ecosystems, and how did your journey lead to 757 Collab?
Wow. So it actually started when I was in banking, kind of the first half of my career. I was in wealth management and managed families whose wealth kind of originated from the sale of companies or companies that they grew. So there was always kind of that entrepreneurial aspect that was compelling to me. I was fortunate enough to then, at one point earlier on in my career, run a family office that really have a good friend who had exited. He's a tech entrepreneur. And so we were doing deals, and that kind of got me on that track. And through time and space, really became enamored with the investment side. So the VC side, the angel seed side, so that side of the table. But what I quickly found was that when you're doing that, especially that early stage kind of investing, it's almost impossible to separate that from ecosystem building because the two are so, not to use such a cliche term, but synergistic and complementary, I should say. So you work closely with accelerators and incubators to find deal flow. And then one thing led to another. And I had the opportunity to step in and lead 757 CoLab, which is the programmatic aspect of what I do, which is incubation, acceleration, as you said at the top. And then also run an angel network that, while it's not exclusive to 757 CoLab's companies, it's called 757 Angels, it is an affiliated investor network. So again, all of these things tie together, but really for me, it's, why do I enjoy it? Well, I wake up to something new every day and, it's so much more dynamic as a role than, at least for me, just staying kind of behind a desk doing one thing over and over and over.
Makes sense. Well, 757 CoLab has become a model for regional innovation. I mean, you guys are blending startup studios, accelerator programs, and angel networks, like you said, to form a full stack support system for founders. Let's kind of unpack how all those pieces work together. So, how do you describe 757 CoLab's mission to someone new? What problems does it solve for founders and the region?
So we're kind of going through this evolution right now on that very thing of how do we better tell our story? What's the narrative around what we do? But you can't, in essence, separate us from the region in which we operate. So what's the broader regional narrative? So right now, and I'm kind of testing it out, but I'm really starting to explain us as a venture hub that focuses on certain aspects of critical infrastructure. So if you think about a region and all the critical infrastructure, you have roads and highways, you might have waterways, you might have buildings, all of that because of the assets in our region. We are really starting to focus on a few that define our region more than most. So that'd be around energy, and energy is such a broad term, but energy security, as well as defense and defense tech. And then also what kind of I'm looking at is coastal resiliency, kind of water security, that type of things. Really, our entrepreneurial support organization is to help all entrepreneurs kind of figure out how they're going to get to the next inflection point. And we're talking at early stages, but then as we start to get further down the funnel, so to speak, we're able to start to narrow our programming and target our programming.
Well, you've created an interconnected system with 757 Startup Studios, 757 Accelerate, and 757 Angels. How do these programs differ and how do they work together under one umbrella?
Yeah. So, really my predecessor, Monique Adams, is the one to thank because she founded these and I stepped into her big shoes about 2.5 years ago. But effectively speaking, 7 Angels was started about just over 10 years ago in the region because there was a need really to catalyze investment in local startups. So that was the first piece of it. And that mission has not changed. So really 757 Angels is an investor network of accredited investors investing at the angel stage into largely tech-centric companies that are from Hampton Roads, our region, as well as the broader state, so the broader part of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So, once that started rolling along, then it was determined that, hey, we need to help kind of some more startup density and startup founders and companies to look at to invest in. So then the accelerator started. And so that was maybe 5 years after 757 Angels started. And then a couple of years after that, it was, okay, what we're serving one stage of company, but we could do more. And so that's where the studios came in, which is essentially an incubator. So it's not a venture studio, but it's an incubator where we work with companies from idea stage to MVP stage, largely working on their go-to-market, their product market fit, some pivots. And so really, when you look at our continuum of programmatic and funding resources, we've become pretty adept at working with companies again from that idea stage through that maybe first round of seed funding stage.
That's great. The Hamptons Roads area is known for defense, logistics, and maritime innovation. How do you see that influencing the types of startups emerging here?
Over the last couple of years, we've seen a ton of dual use startups. So, we've largely as an organization been industry agnostic. So we'll work with anything from a drone company to a CPG food company. But again, as we start to look at what the economic development partners are focusing on, and again, this gets back to the ecosystem building, it's hard in our region to really extract the innovation side from the economic development side. I mean, they're almost married to each other. And so for us, when you look at these companies that we're able to serve with the assets in our region and the stakeholders in our region, we've intentionally started to focus on more of these verticals, whether it's through reactive intake or proactive outreach. And so the dual use companies are ones that might come through our accelerator, for instance, and there's a robot, a painting company. And so once they got through our accelerator, they found that they could actually get some government contracts. So dual use by intent or dual use by happenstance. And so those are really the companies that we're starting to see a lot more of.
Okay. What metrics or milestones are you most proud of, whether it's capital raised, jobs created, or founder supported?
Yeah, it's a good question. Part of it is how much capital we've been able to kind of bring to bear for these companies in terms of follow-on funding or direct funding. So that's sitting well over 100 million. The diversity of founders that we deal with, so 80% of our founders would be considered underestimated founders. That's not a specific part of our mission, but it's just organically how we've grown and work with diverse teams. So I'd say we're really proud of that. I think also too, just putting Hampton Roads slowly but surely more on that both regional and national kind of innovation map in terms of, okay, if you're looking for defense tech and you're looking for maritime tech or some of those, we are one of the best places in the country, if not the world, to consider looking at and building your company because of these world-class centers of excellence across the region. So there's a lot of things proud of for our organization, but probably just the diversity of founders with whom we've worked and supported and then gotten them to that next inflection point. And we're finally starting to put some more refined metrics around success stories and something beyond the economic development metrics that are always, jobs created or stuff like that, which we don't have as much of a direct impact on. So what can we actually have a direct impact on?
Good. Do you have a sense of how many jobs have been created or how many founders you're supporting at this
Yeah,
point?
we, yes, I do. The problem is I have not unfortunately committed it to memory. It's in our impact. We do an impact report every year. So for those who are interested, you just go to our website and you can find it. I will say it's a substantial amount. I mean, if you look at net new numbers, we definitely have over the years contributed to net new jobs in the region and even in the state. Well, I couldn't even say, but it's more than you would think. And it makes the case for, there's always the but for question. Why does acceleration and incubation even matter? If we disappeared tomorrow, who would care? why would it matter? And I think now we actually have the numbers to justify if we weren't around, you would see a noticeable drop in some of these jobs created and some of these economic development metrics that, again, we're not an economic developer, but we are definitely a partner to them. And we are, I'd say, a good kind of arrow in their quiver, so to speak.
That's great. Well, how does 757 CoLab build inclusivity into its mission, with particularly for underestimated or first time founders?
Yeah. For us, even though it's not a stated part of metrics to say we have to take certain amount of underestimated founders, but because our region is so diverse with the military, that adds a ton of diversity to it. But just the expanse of our region and the different kind of socioeconomic stratas of our region, just organically, our front door is open to any and all founders. I will say we are very intentional on serving the high growth founders. But if you are a founder coming in looking to start a Main Street company, we're not going to say, sorry, we can't help. What we will do is off ramp you to one of our partners who is better equipped for that. But I think honestly, it's a region that just is more diverse than most. And so we're the beneficiaries of that. So I'd say for us, it's less proactive thought and more reactive to just where we live and where we operate, and embracing the fact that it is absolutely proven that diverse teams yield, at the end of the day, better outcomes. So we embrace that. And again, entrepreneurism doesn't know race or gender or anything like that. If you've got a great vision and something that a solution to an acute pain point in society, then we're here to.
Great. Well, as AI and automation reshape nearly every industry, startup ecosystems are also evolving. From data driven deal flow to founder enablement, technology is now part of how accelerators operate. So let's kind of dig into that for a minute. How is 57 CoLab using data and digital tools to evaluate, support, and scale your startups?
I love this question because I am proud of our organization in this specific way. We're fortunate to have someone on our team who is an AI kind of guru, and I'd say we're probably one of the more forward-leaning venture hubs in the state when it comes to AI and how we integrate it into our programming and even our internal operations. It actually starts internally. So, we have a kind of an efficiency ratio that we measure for how we're operating internally. And that's a goal and a metric that we strive toward every year. We also employ, we're starting to really employ agentic AI into our operations. We making things more efficient for our line of business leaders to effectively execute on the programming with minimal, disruption, minimal busy work, all of that. So as we have used tools, everything from the typical ChatGPT to how we feed it into our Airtable and all these other platforms, right, that all talk to each other behind the scenes. AI is obviously making that more seamless and more robust. And so, as we're kind of eating our own dog food, now we're starting to go out and look for grants that allow us to fund new models to help our companies at the early stages fail faster or scale faster or pivot faster, I should say. So we just wrote about $500,000 in grants over the past couple months to a couple different foundations that are specifically funding AI efforts and nonprofits from an innovation landscape. And so those are to really start to look at how do we educate, but also integrate, for instance, digital employees into companies at an early stage to help defray some of the startup costs. But again, let them get to that inflection point
Mm-hmm.
or realize that inflection point sooner than later, because things are only getting faster and faster as AI evolves, and it's table stakes for any company now that's in the that's at least tech centric or relies on tech to scale.
Do you see opportunities to integrate AI into like mentorship, founder matching, or
Yeah.
capital allocation processes?
I do. I really do. I think if you ask most venture hub leaders, one of the pain points is, yeah, we've got this great mentor base, but how do we actually effectively connect them with the founders? Founders are going to say, yeah, it takes 99, takes us, 99 people to get to the one that actually, is of value. And it's tough to manage that, but absolutely AI has the potential to really streamline that connectivity. And we're certainly looking at that. For us, it's very similar to how we've integrated AI into our down selection process for our accelerators. We've automated a lot of that through AI, and we just actually the first test was this year with our new defense tech accelerator. And out of several hundred applicants from around the country responding to our accelerator that's focusing on 5 critical needs that the Department of Defense gave us, we tested it out, and lo and behold, it down selected to like 12 companies that the subject matter experts coming from the defense side were raving about. We've proven that integrating AI into that type of functionality can work and can work effectively. Again, it's not we're not of the mindset that it's replacing any human intellect, but it is absolutely, again, it's the efficiency play. So for me, I'm all about efficiency and productivity. So I think that if we look at it that way, then I think that our expectations can be tempered on what AI can do right now for us. So again, mentor matching, perfect example. How do we better connect? We can think about the quality of the interaction afterwards, but really from a quantitative standpoint, how can AI help, whether that's shortening the time of connection or maximizing the number of connections or so. In my mind, you've got this qualitative, quantitative kind of play that you're balancing when you're looking at AI and how to integrate it.
Well, kind of as a fledgling founder myself in the IT and security and AI space, I'm curious to what emerging technologies are most relevant to the founders that you're working with. Is it AI? Is it cybersecurity?
Yeah.
I'm sure green tech is something. You've mentioned defense.
Yeah, for sure, cyber. So AI, again, that's kind of ubiquitous. That's table stakes. It's interesting because I would actually argue cyber in some respects is even more important, but yet it's something that doesn't get as much of the hype as AI. But if you undergird cyber with AI and then you look at it that way, I think for us, as dual use companies continue to become more prevalent coming through our programs, cyber is something that we're going to be much more proactive about. And so I'd say if you look at the most, in my opinion, some of those important functionalities or tech aspects when you're looking at the tech build, definitely cyber security. How is the company itself protecting its data and all of that? AI, of course, powering a lot of this. I'd also say, this interesting kind of place where how do you collect most robustly the voice of the customer, and as you're going to market, and how do you, when you're trying to scale as quickly as these companies have to scale, if you're going to be taking venture capital, ultimately, and then, exponential growth versus incremental growth, where are the breakpoints? Because if you go too fast, maybe cyber takes a hit. And if you focus too much on the cyber side, on the security side, does it slow you down? So, we're not there yet, but how do we work with our subject matter experts in that? It's definitely a different world, not to mention the funding side of it, continuing to use AI across all modalities, all industries. As that continues to exponentially evolve and scale, venture capital is changing some of their models. And so it's just going to be the next 5 years, 3 years, 2 years are going to be a roller coaster, not in a bad way, but in a promising way. We just have to figure out how to responsibly be that kind of rudder and be that calming force for the companies going through it.
This is fascinating to me. How do you balance the human element of startup building with the analytical power of technology?
That's a great question. So I come from it with my investor hat on because that's kind of where my passion lies. And at the end of the day, especially at the early stages, again, it's the idea or kind of angel to that first seed tranche, maybe even up to that first, maybe Series A, you're still betting on the team. I mean, you've got to have, so AI, yes. Can it replace certain things? Absolutely. Can it make things better? Yes. Again, it's table stakes, but equal to that, you've got to have a founding team and a team that you can back. Because at the end of the day, at this stage, you're foolhardy if you're going to bet on the product as a product that's going to remain intact and look the same a year from now, because the product or service is constantly being iterated, right? So that's key. Market dynamics, market opportunity is one that we look at, but at the top of the list, and any funder will tell you, any investor would tell you, or at least they should. I mean, the team is what it's all about. The people at the end of the day is what it's all about. You and I could have probably the same type of discussion if we had AI avatars. And I bet that exists and you could do that. But there's that human, that empathetic, sentient side that AI does not have yet. And so there's a very different interplay. So, I mean, to me, the founders still have to want to engage with us. And only then do you get the absolute buy-in, the conviction, around at the end of the day when these companies are struggling or they're facing payroll shortages or whatever. You've got to be able to have faith in the human aspect to help rationalize different plays beyond the quantitative or, analysis. If you stuck it into ChatGPT and said, okay, give me 3 scenarios to weigh this. I mean, it'll do that. It'll do it great. But I don't know. There's still that human element that's tough to get rid of. And just for your listeners, there's a fascinating podcast. It's a long one. It's a long form, but it's with Mark Andreessen. And he is talking about just, the rise of kind of sentient AI and what does ultimately differentiate AI at scale to the human, to humans. And it's actually the Joe Rogan podcast that he's on, but he argues with, or he debates with Joe Rogan, who's not anti-AI, but a little bit more reserved. So that to me has been the best podcast from a understanding just the dynamic that's beyond the numbers and beyond the text. So
Yeah, well, good. Do you see 757 CoLab itself adopting more AI-driven insights to improve operations?
I do. It's so funny. Literally right before joining you, I got off the phone with a colleague of mine and we were having this exact discussion. Where does it sit in the strategic priority of things? It is very easy to say AI, we can do this, this, and this with AI. And the problem is you move too fast and your team isn't ready. And it's like with anything, we have to be confident that we have the in-house, I think, expertise to responsibly not just engage AI in our internal operations, but then be able to translate that to our founders who we're serving. So, I think that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and we don't want to place too much of our strategic direction in just AI. But AI is increasingly becoming, I think, a fundamental aspect of how we think through operations, efficiencies, cost management. We're always thinking, how could we do this? Maybe instead of now saying, can AI help us with this? It might turn into, we'll try with AI first, and then if it doesn't, then we'll look at some. I don't know how that'll evolve, but right now it's maybe a secondary consideration where I think it'll start to become a primary consideration at some point from an operational perspective. So we'll see.
As you've said many times, I mean, there's always going to be that human in the loop element that I think that's going to be there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, at some point, it might not. I mean, that an organization like ours, maybe AI replaces the need for it, and I hope it's not until after I'm retired. But I do think though that the humans are still in control. We're not all robots yet, and I think it's learning honestly how to adapt and upskill with AI, and I think that's the key. Even myself, I mean, from a management perspective, how do I better manage through AI and with AI, and so yeah, it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it.
Well, running an innovation hub has to be as complex as running a startup portfolio. I mean, it's got to take structure, community, and capital. I'd love to explore the behind the scenes challenges of scaling 757 CoLab. What have been the biggest operational and funding challenges in maintaining a high impact regional accelerator?
So there's a few, when you start out, you're the silver, shiny object, and everybody wants to help lean in and fund you and support you. And fast forward a couple of years down the road, and it's like, okay, well, we're on to the next thing. And so we have to continually reinvigorate the support and the grant funders and the foundation funders and the corporate sponsors. We have to keep our ideas fresh. We have to remain relevant. So it's like every 2 years, you always have to you have to tweak your narrative. And I think, figuring out how to take something that I'm not going to say has become stale, because that's not the case at all, but take something that maybe has lost some visibility because you're not dominating the press every week or every month because you're new. How do you get back in that news cycle? How do you get back in front of, your potential funders with the refreshing narrative and value proposition? I think that's one. So that's just ever present. That's with any organization, even with shareholders of for-profit companies. I'd say another one too is just navigating political environments. This is not a political stance. I don't get into that, but I will say we've had to, with the current administration, really had to think hard about how we're writing our grant requests or grant proposals and how we are responding to RFPs, because we have noticed that it's different than what it was, a couple of years ago. So that's just adapting to the current environment. And so there's always some, and especially with the government shutdown right now, that has a real impact on grants where you have to perform on the grant and then get reimbursed. There's a delay in reimbursement, which impacts your short-term cash flow. And so it becomes a trickle-down effect. So that's definitely challenging. I'd say the third is just just the sheer difficulty of having of being able to plan for a budget. I'm looking at my budget for 2026, and I've had a conversation with my board that, it's really difficult to say we're going to be I can plan expenses all day long. That's easy. It's the revenue side that's really tough, because you've got a lot of grants in play that you might be performing on or finishing up or applying to. And it's an if-then lever constantly. So if this hits, then that changes this side of the P&L or balance sheet and cash flow statement. If this hits, or if this doesn't hit, but this hits, how does that change it? So there's so much lumpiness in cash flow management in a organization like ours, that it is an ever vigilant, ever present kind of, I won't say concern, but challenge to figure out how you're managing ultimately that cash flow. So that's something that is, I think, absolutely unique to running an organization like ours, that I can say all day long to my team and to others, I run it like a for-profit business. I do. But at the end of the day, for-profit businesses don't have to rely on grants and sponsorships and all that. So yeah, that's probably the toughest aspect.
I can't imagine that challenge. Well, how do you measure the effectiveness of ecosystem initiatives? What signals matter most to you?
For us, because we're focused on the high growth space, certainly companies that are scaling outside of the region and having, I'd say, an impact on their industry, again, outside of our region. And that's measured through capital, venture capital raised and growth of the company, growth in revenues, maybe how we see them play out through the press. I would also say some other signals are, again, it's just what's the density of entrepreneurs and startup activity in our region. So I'd say our region is probably one of the best at, we've got a phenomenal scaffold of resources for entrepreneurs, and all of the different entrepreneurial support organizations are great at coordinating and collaborating, more so than most regions I've been in. But in this case, we're obviously not New York. We don't have the density that, a bigger city has. And so we have a challenge with out-migration of talent. So we look at that. I think also, if you were to look at the metrics and the performance, the goals that I have for my team, it's also looking at, for instance, in our startup studios, a lot of business leader gets measured on, how many pivots in a year she is helping these founders to successfully accomplish, how many new products are being brought to market from these companies. Is something as simple as, is their product market fit? And I don't just mean to a kind of is it a nice to have versus a must have? I mean, these are the things that are for us very important to the outside world, okay, not too visible, but I think they're unique to what we do, but yet those are the signals that we really look for. Again, apart from the economic development drivers that we have to track for our grants and our funding partners, which are fine, but I've really been keen on what are the innovation metrics, because we don't have like some benchmark in the industry that says, here are the innovation metrics you should be paying attention to. So we're trying to make that work and figuring out as we go.
Got it. Well, you guys have been so successful. Can you share some lessons that you've learned about balancing the public-private partnerships, philanthropy, and investment capital in ecosystem building?
Yeah, I'd say for us, it starts with culture for me. I mean, culture is everything. So it's not just striving for the best culture internally, but that should bleed out into how you treat your partners, interact with your partners. I've told my team many times that, we don't own these founders. Nobody owns these founders. So an organization like ours, while we do have alumni and we can say, oh, these are our founders that have gone through the program, at the end of the day, we share those founders with the rest of the ecosystem. So even though we say, well, we are, kind of the front door for high growth, working with the high growth ecosystem, and, you know, we have partners that work with them in other ways. So we have to be a little bit humble in that. We know what we do very well, but we can't do everything. So really, I've noticed where we excel is in how we approach partnerships. It's not always what's in it for us. I mean, at the end of the day, the founders are going to benefit or not from what we do. So we can't forget that. Yes, we have self-interest involved. Any organization does. But I always have to remind my team and others that, at the end of the day, will this or does this resonate with the founder? Because if it doesn't, then we're off track. And so, that is one of these things where you kind of have to be somewhat selfless, somewhat humble in your leadership in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because you can't do it all. Even if there might be some competitors, programmatic competitors in the region, but instead of looking at them as competitors, look at it as cooperation. So how can we work with them in a sensible manner so that everybody really knows the lane that they're in, instead of crossing over into lanes and everybody's getting mad? I think you just have to be crystal clear on your value proposition to the founder and stick with that. Don't try to do everything, be everything to everyone. So that's for us where I think I feel like we're doing better and better.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
that makes
really
perfect
just
sense.
being crystal clear on that value proposition.
Makes perfect sense. Well, how do you recruit mentors, investors, and subject matter experts to keep the network strong?
We just overhauled our mentor and subject matter expert kind of bench and network, ironically. And some of that is just being, again, if we know the types of companies that we want to work with and that we feel we are the best equipped to work with, you can translate over to then what type of mentor or subject matter expert do we need to engage to accomplish that. Everything we do going forward is all about voice of the founder. You hear voice of the customer when you're trying to sell a product, but for us, it's voice of the founder. So, and voice of the mentor. So we're constantly, seeking feedback, as I'm sure other organizations do too. So this is nothing, new, but really, we try to live by a few things. Don't bombard the mentors with requests. Try to be very intentional on the connections, leveraging AI like we talked about earlier. But for us, again, it's that intentionality and being crystal clear about your value proposition. And if that I've told my team, it's okay to be exclusive. We don't have to be inclusive on everything. It's okay to be exclusive, because with exclusivity in terms of who we're accepting as a mentor or subject matter expert, that increases the likelihood that we will be delivering the best thing for our founders. So and this is where the human part comes in. It's getting to know somebody. And so we try to do a lot of screening on the front end with who we're working with. And because we have a reputation as well
Right.
to uphold. So, everybody's kind of got to be values aligned on it. And typically that means they'll find us. We're in an enviable position that people just know who we are in our region. And if you're leaning in to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in any way, shape, or form, chances are you're probably going to run across us at some point. And so these mentors and SMEs, self-select, which makes it easier on us. And then we apply our filter to their self-selection, and then we work it out from there.
Well, what advice would you give other regions looking to replicate what 757 CoLab has accomplished?
Yeah, I mean, we always love to talk to anybody about best practices. We certainly don't have all of them. We're constantly learning ourselves. I think one of the things is just your backyard and how you can best serve your backyard, but know the broader regional landscape of entrepreneurial support organizations and what value propositions they have. The reason why CoLab has chosen to do some of the things they've done is because at one point there was a lot of duplication in Virginia's overall entrepreneurial ecosystem in terms of programming, and so we were tripping over each other, and it didn't help the founders. So you have to be very informed about what else is going on beyond your backyard so that you can make the best determination on where you can fill a gap that maybe you're best positioned to, but because of the resources in your region, but others can't. Now they'll do something else really well. Again, there's some organizations like ours that do better on certain things, and so we lean on them. But I think it's kind of discovering yourself on what makes us different from any other accelerator or incubator or anything like that. What we do is not novel. There's many of us out there, but we can, in our focus, be different, and how we execute on that be different. So yes, we are an accelerator. There's a million accelerators out there, but we do our acceleration a little bit differently than others. We focus on a little bit different things than others. But again, it's only in specific areas. So getting back to that exclusivity aspect, we're inclusive with who we work with on a founder standpoint. We are exclusive in who we work with from an industry vertical standpoint.
Well, the world of entrepreneurship is shifting. I mean, regional hubs like yours, it's becoming a real world alternative to Silicon Valley. Let's look ahead at what's next for 757 CoLab and for innovation in Virginia. What's your long-term vision for 757 Innovation Corridor, and where is the ecosystem headed in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'd say so Hampton Roads region, again, I think there's a big effort underway through some of the economic development partners to align the region. And when I say align the region, I mean all stakeholders, higher ed, for-profit, private, public, us, around these verticals I keep talking about. So these industry clusters that we know we can double down on, and we have the resources that no one else has, or if they've got them, it's on a different coast. So I think if you look at Hampton Roads, I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we have the opportunity to crystallize our narrative around what we are strong at and where we excel in terms of industry, which is more of a macro theme. And then if you start to drill down into the entrepreneurial side, again, for us, it's, are we promise or meeting our aspiration of becoming a nationwide or nationally recognized or thought of accelerator or venture hub in this critical infrastructure innovation? And again, that's a really wide kind of swath, but drilling down into those industry verticals that Hampton Roads is focused on. So I see us at least for the next 3 to 5 years, strengthening our advanced manufacturing supply chain, defense sectors. Obviously, maritime is always going to be there. Is that we will be able to go into, let's say in 5 years. I don't think three. I think 3 is too early. In 5 years, if you go to Texas, if you go to South by Southwest, and you say, I'm from Hampton Roads, then my hope would be that somebody will say, oh yeah, I've heard of you guys. You're really good at this or really good at that, right? Because right now, if you ask where Hampton Roads is or have you heard of Hampton, everyone's like, no, we haven't heard. And I'm not saying this to be in the
I've heard
pejorative.
of
I
it.
mean, I love Hampton Roads. Well, there you go. So we've got some, but I think we need to tell the story better. We have 17 municipalities. It's crazy how the political divisions and all that, but we need to have a very concise narrative. And I think we can get there. And so 5 years, that's what I hope, is that Hampton Roads, it's known nationally more for kind of the regional assets. I live in Richmond and didn't even know all that Hampton Roads had. And Richmond's hour 45 minutes up the road. So I'd like to think that that could happen. And of course, the success of Hampton Roads and growth of Hampton Roads, so goes our success and growth. So we are vested in the Hampton Roads story because we are part of that story.
Well, that whole conversation kind of gets into my next question around, and I know you've thought about this. So, how do you guys plan to attract more national attention or investment into the Hampton Roads startups?
So it's on several levels. One is just on the investment side, building stronger syndicates. Being very aware of when we have a deal that's coming through the 757 Angels, how are we helping that company raise other funds? So what's our syndicate look like both regionally and nationally? And we have those syndicates, so continually strengthening those. And then on the programmatic side, again, being very intentional on the types of companies we are accepting into our programs so that we know we can deliver on this promise of delivering the best mentorship, the best subject matter expertise, the best XYZ. As I just said, putting forth not just CoLab's narrative, but Hampton Roads' narrative. So I think, making sure that we responsibly do both of those.
Well, do you foresee expansion into new sectors? Like, I mean, obviously AI-driven health is becoming huge. Sustainability, security, or even defense tech.
Yeah. So, what's interesting is the Venn diagrams around all of these different industries, right? So essentially you've got defense that can cross over into maritime. You've got energy security that crosses over into coastal resiliency and defense. And so I think for us, it's how do we grow at a responsible play? I mean, I told my board the other day, the problem is we are now so involved in so many other conversations. We're being pulled into it. How do we not lose sight or focus of the core things that we can execute on? I do think that there will be nuances over time. For instance, with energy, perfect example. Right now, I keep saying energy. Energy security is really what it's about. Well, but energy is so broad. So is it hydrogen? Nuclear? Is it, offshore wind, which is big in our, so having to think through that, also weighing that against the political constructs of the current and future administrations, you have to kind of ebb and flow with that. Defense, I mean, right now we're Navy heavy, but we're talking to, other branches, and to what extent does that mean that our critical needs that we look at change? So I think what you'll find is if we can stand firm on these few macro verticals, then it allows us to go deeper versus just be a mile wide and an inch deep. I don't know how that plays out yet because we're still in the early stages of just building out these industry clusters. But I'm excited to see where it goes. And again, tying it all the way back to the beginning of this conversation with AI. AI could upend everything, and next thing you know, it's something completely different. So we just have to be I've told my team, we have to be constant learners. We cannot be satisfied with knowing the current state on anything and then just saying 2 years later, well, using whatever if you have a platform, you better be current on what you are espousing, because we can't afford not to be up to date. I mean, AI will take us to task on that in and of itself. So we've got to constantly be learning what are the latest trends, because not just to our founders so we can serve them better, but for our relevancy. Because we could easily wake up one day, and if we're not careful, and lose that relevancy that we worked so hard to grow.
Right. Are there any partnerships or collaborations out there that could take you all's impact to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, we applied recently to an OpenAI for an OpenAI grant. I think that would be a really cool partnership if we could land that. Certainly, you've got your heavyweights, Google and Microsoft, and how are we partnering with those types of companies? I'd say from a more regional approach and local approach, it's how we're looking at these worldwide centers of excellence, like our Jefferson Lab accelerator. That's like a real deal accelerator, not a programmatic accelerator. And that's, helps kind of take data that's more of a big data play. Looking at NASA Langley, which has, that's the presence in our backyard. How do we work with both of those organizations to commercialize some of their IP that's trapped inside their four walls? But one of Canon's major presence in the U.S. is right in Newport News. It's how we're working with them on the latest technologies that they see and that they're putting to market. So for us in our region, I think it's more of looking at we are offering some type of value to these big players, and so that they will see us not as just that that organization that works with startups, but potentially something that they can leverage for themselves, and we can help them meet their goals on some level. So the partnerships largely are, I'd say, they're bigger partnerships, working with anybody, but the big ones we really want to continue to figure out ways to have our brand aligned with some other signature brands, because that's where I think we can level up. They've got megaphone and the platform we don't have. I'd say that's probably like that with any startup, right? They're always looking to put on their slide deck that they always have that one page of logos of your clients or pipeline clients. It's the same with us, right? So who are you being thoughtful about partnering?
Well, what does success look like for you, both personally and for the region?
We've got a 3-year breakthrough objectives. We've got 5 of them. And I think at the end of 3 years, the goal is to hit these 5 objectives that would, if we hit them, would really ensure that we have some measure of sustainability in our operations and our impact. So hitting those, reaching certain kind of a financial sustainability, growing to represent all of Hampton Roads, because it's such a vast region, and having a presence throughout the Hampton Roads region versus just headquartered in one aspect, leveraging AI for maximum efficiency in our operations, really ensuring that we are a premier venture hub in the critical infrastructure space. These are all 3-year goals. So that would mean success, for CoLab and for the region. It's kind of what we talked about earlier. You're just having that crystal clear narrative on why Hampton Roads. And personally, I think it's fun. It's exciting to see. I think if those things happen, then that certainly has a certain sense of personal fulfillment. I'd love to at some point either raise another fund or serve as a GP in a fund, but that's got a few things to do at CoLab before that happens. So we'll see. But I'm having fun. I think I want to make sure that I'm enjoying what I do, and I don't want to lose that. To get paid to do your passion is kind of, I feel kind of fortunate. So hopefully I can continue that run.
Yeah, it's not a job, and it's got to be satisfying to see some of these guys just take off based
Yeah.
on what you guys
Yeah.
are trying to help them do. I
I
can't
mean,
imagine what's
I
designed to
think,
do that.
I think for the region, maybe the one answer is just, God, it would be great to have like a huge unicorn win, in our region. Just that one exit that people say, "Oh, that's Hampton Roads." We have the potential. There are many companies our midst that could be not just unicorns or either are current unicorns, but they actually sell for the big money. So that would be nice.
Well, if there are any founders listening who are in smaller cities or regions, what advice would you give them about building community like you guys have and accessing capital, even outside traditional tech hubs?
Take a long view approach. I mean, the world obviously operates in at breakneck pace, but the stuff we do today, you got to have a long kind of view of it. Otherwise, it'll kill you. So whether you're a founder who's raising capital now, and is getting ready to finish whatever round you're on, just know that you're gonna never stop fundraising. I mean, it is what it is. Get used to it. You don't have to like it, but you got to embrace it because it's just part of the nature of the game. So that's the long view. And if you're a founder who's also helping to build an ecosystem, whatever you do today, you might not see the fruits of your labor, until after you're out of the ecosystem, or it's a generation from now. But I think that you have to, again, it's that humble confidence trait that you have to the long game and then back into what the short game looks like. That may sound completely obvious, but a lot of people start with the short game and kind of lose sight of that long game. I prefer to look at the long game and work backwards and get to where I am now.
Well, Paul, thank you for sharing your insights for everything you're doing to cultivate innovation in Virginia. And for our listeners who may be founders, investors, or community builders interested in what a regional ecosystem can truly accomplish, how should they connect with you to find out more?
Yeah, I'd say one of two things. Go to our website. We www.757colab.org. That's two L's in CoLab, so short for collaborations, and colab.org. That has everything that you'll need, or, feel free to reach out directly to me. It's just paul@757colab.org.
And if you're thinking about how AI and data strategy can amplify innovation and operations in your own organization, that's what we do at Proteligen. Let's connect. Until next time, ask better questions, build smarter systems, and stay on the edge of intelligence. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it. Sorry for my dog. She was saying bye as well.
Yeah, no problem, man.